Hey, this is Xenu, and you're listening to Anti Moonboy News. We got a good one today for you folks. We will be covering day 3 of Monerokon, the final day. Lots of great presentations there. And also we'll be talking about Ashigaru and a potential attack vector, and whether or not you should be concerned about it. And yeah, you should be. So we're going to be covering that as well. You ready for the program, robot?
Beep boop. I'm surrounded by green candles. Beep boop.
All right, well, to start the show off, we are going to do the Superchats. xmrchat.com/Xenu if you'd like to participate. And we got 3 Superchats this week. First one is from MAVMCQ, and he donates 0.015 XMR. He says, "Can you explain your horse and knight logo? Love the show." Well, thanks for that donation, man. I appreciate that. And yeah, the logo of the show, it was designed by Vosto Amicio, my graphic designer friend. He does a lot of Monero stuff. Like, he designed the Monerokon design work and stuff. I mean, yeah, I pretty much reached out to him and said that I was making a channel. I was going to call it Anti Moonboy, and I think, yeah, I wanted the logo to be like a coat of arms. I had an idea of like a coat of arms, something like medieval. I don't know why, like something like that. And so he had me send him like words that I wanted to, like words to describe what I wanted the show to emulate and to be like. So for example, I was like, I wanted to be about liberty, and I wanted to be about privacy, like freedom, but also there's that traditionalism, that conservatism of being cypherpunk that I wanted, and protecting that and fighting back against like a moonboyism. And so the logo that he created is like based off that, where you have kind of the knight on his horse with his lance, and he's kind of like fighting back against the moonboys, right? And it has that element of traditionalism where it's the parallel here is like the knight here, but it's at the same time like modern, I guess. So yeah, actually a lot of thought went into it, believe it or not. And also, yeah, the orange color too. I wanted like orange, like I guess like as a brand, I wanted like black and orange to kind of surround this program, which, as you've seen with my website and Darknet Market Maximalism, it's a recurring thing with this show. So anyways, yeah, I do want to eventually have merch with the logo. By the way, if you want merch, antimoonboy.com/merch. I have 2 t-shirts there. I want to sell like 20 more t-shirts before I make any new ones. So sales are good. I'm still getting a couple ones trickling in, but yeah, definitely buy a shirt if you want to donate to the show. And eventually I do want to get one with the logo, like just a simple black tee. I think that would pop pretty hard. But anyway, yeah, thanks for that donation, man, and that question. I appreciate that. Next up, we got Leo, and he donates 0.02 XMR. He says, "Very cool work on the spy nodes. Thanks for the education. Just a random message that would be great to have repeated in your show too." And he posted a link, and then he says, "Binging Odyssey now!" Well, that's great. Yeah, I mean, for Odyssey, I'm really happy you're listening on there, as well as my Rumble listeners. I'm trying to get more people on those platforms, just because like YouTube, they can take us down at any day, really, because we are talking about privacy protocols, and some people don't like that. People don't like open source software, right? Especially ones that are about privacy. Why? Because they're evil and they're sick. But this is just the world we live in. And furthermore, because I'm on YouTube, I can't really opine about certain topics, right? So he posted a link. It was related to like coronavirus and viruses. I can't really expand on this just because like unfortunately I want to stay on YouTube because I want to like build my audience. Unfortunately, so like I have to like restrict my freedom of speech, which sucks, but I think you guys understand, right? But the link he posted is on XMR chat if you guys want to check that out. I will say one thing though, is like when it comes to like COVID, and obviously there's a lot of fucked up things that happened during COVID. I would stress though that people should really focus more so on the fact that people were forced to do things. That really should be the focus. Getting lost in like these debates about that end up being like people sending like peer-reviewed articles to each other. You know when that happens in like a debate where you have like oh well look at these studies, and the other person says oh look at these studies, and it doesn't really solve anything. It's easier to like simplify the issue and just say, should people be forced to do something by the government? And that should pretty much always be no. I can really only think of like a couple circumstances that are like where that should be yes. But yeah, forcing somebody to get a vaccine or else they get fired is, I think, ridiculous. And I think that should just be more so the focus. So anyways, I can't really expand much more. That alone will probably get my channel taken down. So, and I'm also glad you like the spy notes stuff. We're going to be talking a little bit about the spy notes today when we do our Monerokon recap. And lastly, a donation here from Monero-chan Snuggler. He donates 0.015 XMR. Thank you. And he says, "Hi Xenu, love the show. Made a lot of money on Monero and crypto in general. Oh man. But I struggle in real life with being bullied for being really short, and in parentheses 5'7". And he goes on, and feeling generally insecure. Most recently at Monerokon. I guess he was surrounded by all these giga chads at Monerokon, so he felt a little insecure. And then he goes on to ask, do you have any advice for short guys? Thanks. All right. Well, thank you, Monero-chan Snuggler. Yeah, it's very intimidating when you're at Monerokon because like they have to like lock the doors and like barricade the doors there because like the women are just in heat around that place. I mean, it is the chads of the city there. You pull out your phone, you show a girl you're using graphene. She's very interested and not creeped out at all. Right? Am I right, fellas? Yeah. Shout out to my fellow short kings. Yeah, I'm a short king myself, and this must be someone who lurked one of the chat rooms I used to be in. I used to do some trolling with this, but anyways, I appreciate the donation, man. And I guess don't feel insecure about being short. Just lift weights and go for the Joe Rogan bod. That's what I've found. If you go for the Joe Rogan body, people will make fun of your height, but they won't fuck with you. Take the iron pill is what I would recommend. But thank you very much for that donation, and that was pretty funny. All right. So anyways, xmrchat.com/Xenu. If you'd like to donate or send a troll message, we'll read it on the air, start out the program. But now, so before we get to Monerokon, I just want to give a few channel updates. The first thing is I will be creating an Anti Moonboy chat room soon. Probably within the next couple weeks, if not sooner. It's going to be on Matrix, and I was going to try to do it on Simplex chat, but the group chat feature on there, it's buggy. And yeah, I mean, I've been using Matrix now for the past couple years. And what I like about it is all the Monero IRC chats are bridged onto there. And also you can have pretty good customization for the rooms that you create. So yeah, we're going to have a room. I don't know if I'm going to make it walled off or not, so you might need to send like, you know, a little amount of Monero to gain access, and we'll give you a password, or I'll just have it so anyone can join. But yeah, it'll be moderated. We can just hang out, and you can talk about Monero or whatever. It'll be just basically just be a hangout where I'll be there, and yeah, that'll be that. But it will be on Matrix. I wanted to do Simplex, but it's just the groups are too buggy with it, and I just didn't really want to deal with that. Plus, I'm already on Matrix, so it's not that difficult. Like, I could start it now, but first I want to self-host a Matrix myself. So I'm going to be doing that, and then once I do that, I'll make a group, and yeah, I'll probably just post it on my Twitter. I'll announce it on the podcast as well. So keep an eye out for that. Now, for the past week, yeah, I've been doing a ton of different things. I have a video coming out probably this week on PGP keys and how they work. It's very much a beginner's video. I think people will like it because I'm going to pretty much explain how to PGP encrypt, how that works, and what the concept is. Because I think a lot of people just don't understand it, and it's really a very simple concept. And I think really understanding PGP encryption is like the first step of really understanding how privacy works, with computers at least. So we're going to be doing that. I also have installed Darkirc, which is the chat protocol developed by Darkfi. And so I'm going to have probably like an installation guide, as well as my thoughts, the pros and cons of Darkirc, my thoughts on it. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not a perfect protocol. I definitely have some issues with it, but overall it's been pretty cool. Some cool people on there, you know, and I like the thought process behind it. There's some cool ideas cooking up there. You know, with Darkfi though, and I'm just going to come out and say, I'll expand on this in the video that I eventually make on it, but with Darkfi, that project has some good working for it, but the issue with it right now is the tokenomics. And if you're a fan of Darkfi, you really got to push them on this. Because the thing is, if they come out with a dev tax or a pre-mine, it's really going to suck a lot of the interest out of that project, especially from my perspective. It's going to make it seem like a cash grab to me. And so I really encourage supporters of Darkfi to push back on that, because having a completely fair distribution is a way to do it. You know, you look at, so far they have like flip-flopped, because initially they were just going to open up as proof of stake, and they've flip-flopped on that, and they said, no, we're going to start with mining with RandomX, merge mine to Monero. Fantastic. That's a great switch. Now let's take it a step further though, and say it's going to be fair distribution, no pre-mine, no dev tax. If they make that next incremental step, I will be far more interested in this project. But because they haven't done that yet, it's a red flag. Because like, why haven't they talked about tokenomics yet? You know what I mean? That's usually what you want to talk about early on with a cryptocurrency project, because the economics here are important. So we'll see what happens with that. I'll expand on that in the video I eventually make, but yeah, I don't know. And I have other things as well, but Darkirc though, it's worth checking out, I think, just because it is an interesting concept. And I respect the fact that they're trying to do something different in that regard. So yeah, keep an eye out for those videos. Now let's get to Monerokon. Yeah, so day 3 of Monerokon was absolutely packed with some really interesting content. I really had a lot of enjoyment doing this recap for this year of Monerokon, and I definitely want to do it for conferences in the future. I think it would be a lot of fun to just have like a recap like this, because it keeps me, you know, motivated to check out these presentations, and also I've gotten a lot of good feedback from people who've enjoyed it. So thanks if you've been listening to these. I know some people find these to be a little dry, but it's a good way to like keep your ear to the ground of you know, what's going on. So yeah, the day started off with Juraj and his presentation, Fellow Monerites, Are We Lost? Now, Juraj, his name, by the way, is spelled Juraj. So if they did not pronounce his name when he was introduced, I would have been saying Juraj, like the uncultured swine that I am. But no, his name is Juraj. I don't know what country he's from. Probably like, maybe actually he's probably from like the Czech Republic, right? Or maybe Slovakia or something. I don't know. It's a cool name. But anyways, yeah, his presentation started off with a really interesting metaphor here, where he's drawing a parallel between cypherpunks and like hill tribes. So like he's saying, like, you know, back in the older days where you would have these like cities, and then on the hills you would have these decentralized tribes, and these tribes are not easily taxed. They have oral traditions. They're like spread out, you know, distant, and they're not politically active. And he draws that parallel to cypherpunks. Very true. I like that parallel a lot. I've never really thought of that. He brings up like they're strategically ungovernable, and that their invisibility beats confrontation. Yeah, because like if they were to like march onto the city to try to take it over, they would get squashed. So instead, they kind of just like stay back and do their own thing, and it's way too much work for the state to go after them. So they're kind of just like, we'll just leave them alone. Too much. And you know, generally that's kind of how things are today, and that's kind of my outlook. You know, like as a cypherpunk, you know, trying to be involved in like local politics, maybe that's worthwhile. I don't know, man. I kind of just view this as like a giant machine that's just going in one direction, and there's a lot of corruption inside of it, and a lot of people who aren't respecting my rights. So instead, I do one thing that I can directly protest against that, and that's using free and open source software and kind of cutting myself off of that surveillance. And it's a really effective way of protesting. Juraj, though, he starts talking about network effects and how Bitcoin has an advantage in that. And, you know, really, I'm in disagreement with how he kind of takes this, because he then argues from the perspective of achieving global adoption, which I think is kind of in contrast to the rest of his presentation. Because, like, he's kind of going against his opening statement, right? Where he's, like, talking about being, like, hill tribes being, like, separated from the state. But now he's talking about how we should be, like, trying to get the network effect of Monero greater so more people adopt it. But like, I thought that's the whole point of being in a hill tribe, like, right? Being separated from things, doing our own thing, passing down our traditions, you know, by generation, instead of subscribing to what everyone else is doing. So I don't really understand why he shifted there. You know, he also mentions exchanges being hostile to Monero as a negative. And this is true and false, like, or I guess you can argue it being true or false. Like, yeah, absolutely. It's not good from the perspective of, you know, making it easier for people to get Monero. Absolutely. But the thing is, exchanges aren't going after Monero. They're going after the concept of digital cash. Monero just happens to be digital cash, but they're also going after Bitcoin. You know, they're going after Samurai Wallet, right? They're going after coin join protocols, any type of privacy with Bitcoin, they're going after. It's not just Monero. Now, Monero being the, you know, the image of this, well, that kind of just shows you that Monero's leading the charge. And I think that's important to notice. Because, like, from this anti-government perspective, people aren't talking about Zcash. And there's a reason for that. This is why Monero is being used in darknet markets, and it's being used in general. It's because people associate Monero with, you know, using cryptocurrency in defiance of the state, and this is what gives it its culture. And that's why it has this like clout and this presence, and yeah, it really snowballs from there. And also he says that Monero's failed at number go up tech. I, again, don't really agree with that. I mean, literally, I sold my friend 2 Monero back in April for $400. And I just checked today, and Monero's $340 per Monero. So I think Monero's doing like pretty fine with that. Maybe not as well as Bitcoin, but I think Monero's doing pretty much fine. And he also mentions that drug dealers just have Bitcoin rather than Monero. That's just not true. I don't know where he's getting that from. So yeah, I think like he started the presentation off like really well, but then I think it just got muddy there. I'm not really sure what happened, but he finishes nice. He then starts talking about like eCash and trusted mints, and I like this. Not that I like those protocols, but he's like basically developing like a swap service of Monero into Lightning, where basically you like put in Monero and then it gives you like Lightning that you can then spend. And I think that's a cool concept to have, like Monero being used as like your in this case your savings account, and then you kind of plop it into like a service and then it spits out eCash for you. So I think that was really cool. So anyways, yeah, that was the presentation. I guess I was kind of arguing against it. It was worthwhile to listen. Hopefully I didn't come off as debating too hard, but I had a bone to pick with how he's saying that Monero is lost, but I think Monero culture is doing actually fantastic right now. And, really the price appreciation, I don't really think it's as dependent on people buying and holding it and developing that culture as much as it's dependent on influencers talking about Monero. Because really that's all it's going to take. All it takes to get a cryptocurrency to pump is an influencer shilling it. And we've seen that time and time again. All right, so next up we had Robert Blinov talk about the value of peer-to-peer networks. And this was a summary of peer-to-peer networks versus a centralized point of failure. This was cool. He talked about Briar Chat, which I've actually never used. That's a peer-to-peer chat over Tor. That also uses Bluetooth if the internet happens to not be working. Talked about Jammy and Quiet, among other protocols. He talked about how even when you try to encrypt things, that there's metadata. This is a very important point that is lost on a lot of people. Metadata is really the problem. This is the issue of internet privacy, computer privacy. It's metadata. I think a lot of people get really stuck into debating like what cryptocurrency is more private. The cryptocurrency is like the tool, or it's just like one tool of like 1,000 different things. And like having like something being perfectly private is like impossible, because you're going to be leaking metadata in different ways. And it really just comes down to like knowing exactly what you're doing and doing everything possible to limit that metadata, right? So he gives an example of like talking about how the sound of electricity, if you're standing next to a like electrical tower, the actual sound emitting from it will change. And if someone has like a sound recording of it, or a sound recording of you, they can tell what time of day it is depending on that electrical frequency. And like you would never think of something like that, right? But the government has tools like this at their disposal. Doing Fed Time, he had a article or a video piece about how you can use like a CPU fan to tell what somebody's password is. Like crazy stuff like that. So it's a rabbit hole that you can go down, and you'll drive yourself crazy trying to like solve all of it. But to bring things back though, the point here is that metadata will always be leaked. So when you're working with peer-to-peer networks, it's important to really study them, understand their trade-offs, and to do as much as you can to make sure it's decentralized, that there's not like a centralized point of failure. So he also talks about like mesh networks, and he also talks about the difference between relays and servers. So it was a cool talk, kind of covering a lot of different things regarding peer-to-peer networks. Next up, we had Deki, who talked about Ayn Rand's ideas connected to privacy and crypto. Now, Ayn Rand, at least this is how it is in America, but in America, if you talk about being, say, pro-libertarian, like you have like libertarian ideals or whatever, the insult that is used against you is that, oh, you probably read Ayn Rand. Like, I don't know why. Like, I don't know where this came from. It's like this Reddit tier insult. Like, oh, you want to end the Fed? Let me guess, you like Ayn Rand? And the thing is, the people saying that insult, 90% of them have never read Ayn Rand. Like, you can tell, like, they don't really understand, like, what she was, like, talking about at all. Anyways, this guy was well-spoken. And he talked about how Ayn Rand wanted a gold standard, and that this would have been realized by cryptocurrency. And yeah, I do think, like, about these old-school libertarians, how they would have reacted to, something like Bitcoin and its creation and Monero. I'm sure they would have been pretty hype about it. He talks about how objectivism, which is the kind of philosophy that Ayn Rand wrote about, how objectivism merges with cryptocurrency. So, for example, he talks about how self-custody is similar to individual sovereignty, or how immutable ownership is like property rights, or how permissionless systems are like how we can be our own bank, and how privacy by design is like someone who has rational self-interest, right? The best quote from this presentation, this is from Ayn Rand, is that civilization is the progress of a society towards privacy. The savage's whole existence is public, ruled by the laws of his tribe. Civilization is the process of setting man free from men. That's a good one, man. I really like that quote. So anyways, yeah, if you like Ayn Rand, you like Monero, check this one out. Next up, we had Joseph the Parrot. And this is called Beyond the FGC9. This one was hardcore, man. Woo! Now, what this guy's doing is he is making open source guns. Oh, yeah. Now, he starts out by saying that free money is not that different than free printed guns. And that 3D printed guns are attacking the monopoly on violence. Bam! Oh, man, that's hardcore. I don't even know if I can be talking about this on YouTube, man. And he has this whole chart, showing the gun rights of different countries. So, yeah, I mean, as an American, I can tell you right now that, like, a lot of states have pretty strict gun laws. It's definitely not like every state's you can just walk around with, like, a gun. Like, it's not like that. But depending where you are, it can very well be like that. He mentions practicality, invulnerability, and competitiveness as these three standards that they're trying to meet with their development. He mentions Jay Stark, who was the creator of the FCG9, which stands for Fuck Gun Control 9mm, which I actually did not know. I knew of the FCG9 because Jay Stark is relatively well known on the internet, at least. So anyways, he then developed the Urutau, and he goes into the technical details of that. And, he views this as an improvement over the FGC9, and he goes into all these details about how it's improving. And, at one point he does talk about how Sisyphus with his rock, it's kind of like the cat and mouse game of privacy, where we're always kind of, that game is just never ending, which is true. We can't relax, right? We got to keep moving forward. And he also talked about some interesting things with counter-opsec, with like how fingerprinting can happen with different materials and stuff. So that was pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, ever since I started my job as a machinist, like, It's crazy, man, how talented like someone who knows a trade is. Like if you're like not in that world. So like hearing him talk about this, making these like guns and stuff, it really is an art. Like, using a lathe and putting something like this together. But it does seem like they are like making it so it's actually relatively easy. So yeah, that talk was awesome. Definitely worth checking out, especially if you're into guns. We then had Sarang, who we had on day one, and he talked about mnemonic seeds for risky situations. So the mnemonic seed, that is the list of words that you have to write down. That is your private seed, right? And he talks first about how keys are generated, and then he talks about mnemonic devices, how that there's no universal standard, but the most common approach is BIP39. And he then talks about the methodology of how keys are generated, okay? So he does like an overview of this, but then he introduces a problem, and that being border control. So let's say you're going over a border. How can you do that if you are a target and you might have cryptocurrency with you? And let's say we're in this future where cryptocurrency is used a lot. Well, how are you going to go over that border with a private seed? Well, obviously there's like a million different ways you can do this. But he's introducing this as a way of like, you're definitely going to get searched. All your shit's going to be looked through. How can you do this? Like, how can you go through that border, get thoroughly searched, but know with confidence that you're going to be okay? So he first brings up this idea of a border wallet. And I've heard of these. Basically, it's like a grid of words. And what you do is you memorize a pattern on this grid. And that pattern is your seed phrase. So yeah, he talks like a negative here is what if they just take away the grid, which is true. Like they could just take away, your essentially that's your wallet if they take away your grid, unless you can replicate it easily. So he says that's not really the best idea. He then mentions a brain wallet, which I think that would just be memorizing the 12 words. I didn't write anything down for this. I think that's what it was. But then he brings up his answer for this, which he calls emergent seed. Get it? Emergency seed, emergent seed. Very clever, like the name. And it's shortened entropy. You pick a block hash. So I think you memorize a block header or the number of the block, and then you only have to do 7 words. Yeah, I kind of got a little lost here, but basically it was about like making a customary short-term wallet for usage where you only, in this case, would have to memorize like 7 words and then the number of a block or something. So yeah, with stuff like this, like with his emergent seed solution, it does seem like you can get this really quickly, kind of thing, where you can establish a really like a private seed really quickly. And I think that's kind of what he was going up for there. The next one was Sockstrace. Probably one of the more interesting talks for me because I've been really studying a lot of Tor lately. Been really getting into Tor and just network privacy in general. So the presenter was Jeremy Rand or Robert Mindo. I forget which one. There's only one guy who was able to make the trip, but it was Sockstrace. So sorry, I forgot your name. But anyways, it was a really great talk though, and he starts off by saying that privacy is not just on chain. If someone can link your IP address to a Monero transaction, the cryptographic protections won't necessarily save you. Right there, that sentence, he gets it. And there are so many like privacy like developers who don't understand the sense or like are seemingly ignorant to it. It's all about the metadata, guys. And network privacy is shit right now. It is the biggest vulnerability that Monero has and every other cryptocurrency. Like everyone's just doing stuff on the ClearNet. Like, that's a massive metadata leak. And people, like, I don't think they really understand that they're, like, totally naked out there. So then he says, just use Tor. It's not practical advice because data leaks can happen. Now, it's not saying Tor is bad. It's that if you're not correctly using Tor, it can be bad. And I actually had this happen to me recently. So, I mentioned I'm doing a video on Dark IRC, and I was also just doing Tor through IRC recently with WeChat. It's a IRC protocol. I'm going to be making videos, I think, on that as well. But like, when I'm like learning about this, it's kind of like I want to make sure I'm doing this correctly and like not leaking my IP address. Because if you just go on IRC without doing anything, your IP address will literally be visible to everybody. So like if you're not careful, you're like doxing yourself. So it's really important to like know what you're doing, right? And if you're like using Tor, but like your config is set up so you're also using like ClearNet stuff, like your IP address will still be there, right? So you kind of want to like make sure you're aware that you can leak metadata that will give away your identity. So with Sockstrace, you can actually detect proxy leaks or the connections that escape Tor. And you can do this by monitoring network activity at the system call level. So basically, it uses a Linux kernel feature called seccomp user space notifications. And this is a monitoring process to look at specific syscalls made by other processes. And you're able to like basically see if there's leaks happening. So you can handle these leaks in different ways. You can immediately terminate the leak, or you can log the attempt at it, or you can just log it. This is basically sandboxing. So he also gave an example where he was able to find a leak in Firefox when he was starting WebRTC meetings. So he was starting like some conference call, and the ability to flag the network system calls that look suspicious, even if they're not sending anything. And he said, he made it clear that this is, really valuable, and it has an edge. So then he compares Sockstrace to Tor Socks, which I'm familiar with. It's like a Tor wrapper, similar to Sockstrace. He also compares it to Whonix, which is a Linux distribution that routes internet traffic through relays, essentially using the Tor network. So there's like a lot of other protocols as well, but this one is new and it's being researched. Very cool stuff. I'm firmly in belief that this type of network level stuff, this is going to be the new meta going forward. And it's really important that we start studying this more. And that leads me to Defeating Spy Nodes. Presentation by Rucknium, Boog, and me. Well, I just read the slides, but I was involved, right? And yeah, this was awesome. We got tons of positive feedback. Hell, the Superchat today mentioned it. I mean, I got a bunch of people saying that they like this presentation, and yeah, it was awesome. I think this was like kind of stole the show of the week from what I understand. A lot of people were talking about, network level privacy, and yeah, this is like really important stuff. This is why I'm so hard on Xano, because they're not taking this seriously. And if you're a project not taking network level privacy seriously, you're fraudulent. So anyways, yeah, it's a great talk, a really great summary of Monero being attacked. And that actually leads me to a new website made by Rucknium. You can go to moneronet.info. moneronet.info. I'll post a link. And this actually gives you a visualization that you can play around with of the suspected spy nodes versus the honest reachable nodes. And it has all these different graphs you can drag and drop and stuff. It shows the estimated number of honest nodes with blockchain pruning enabled, The estimated number of honest nodes with RPC enabled. It has a tree map of honest and spy nodes. It has all this like interactive stuff. It's really cool. And even has a IP address search thing as well. So nice interactive way of like looking at this data. And yeah, this is complicated stuff, guys. I really urge people to just spend some time. And if you've never run a node before, you really should learn how to do it. I am going to be making a node little mini series. I'm going to be doing a lot of content. Believe me, the content I'm making right now is, I have a lot of videos I want to make, and we are going to be spending time, talking about nodes in general. I will have like a basic how to run a node video. In addition, I'm probably going to make yet another like Tor video and I2P video as well, and talking about the differences between them, etc. Because the thing is, I'm learning right now myself. So really, this is really great stuff. So definitely check that website out and check this talk out too. So yeah, we got 2 more, and I'll be honest with you guys. At this point, watching these presentations, I started getting a little tired. I was kind of, so to be honest, these last 2 presentations, I was kind of on fumes when I was watching these.
Beep boop. Stop being lazy, Xenu. Beep boop.
No, I mean, I watched everything. Don't worry. I watched them. I just, I was tired at this point. Next up, we had Martin Arness talking about Monero after DAC8. So basically, this guy was actually very intelligent. Like, he was talking about like exchanges and like making doing your taxes with exchanges and like needing more on and off ramps and stuff. But this guy was very highly intelligent. I need to go back and rewatch this one, because he was talking about how he's been working with regulators and exchanges for a while, so he really knows his stuff. And he mentioned how when he was working, or he was working with Kraken, or he knew somebody working with Kraken, and how every single Monero incoming transaction that they would receive would be flagged just because it had Monero. I'm not surprised by that at all. Like, this is how they view Monero. Like, oh, he's using it, flag it. And we have this criticism of Bitcoin where it's like, Bitcoin is fungible or not fungible. Like, people argue like, well, if you have dirty Bitcoin, it's a problem, right? Like, therefore Bitcoin isn't fungible. It's like, well, the way they view Monero is it's all dirty. And this actually goes back to, talking about digital cash earlier. The problem really is not them targeting Monero. It's targeting the concept of digital cash. That's really what's happening. So it really does not surprise me at all that he's saying like, yeah, they're just flagging Monero transactions going into Kraken. I don't know if that's like worldwide or if it was just in like Colombia, I think he said, but he had that anecdote. And he mentions how the end game is to cut off the easy on-ramps for Monero. 100% agreed. It's just making this more complicated for people. It's making it hard for them. And so anyways, this DAC8, basically, it's going to start January 1st, 2026. It's Europe only. And basically, tax authorities are going to begin working with chain analysis companies doing real-time KYC. And this means that the over-the-counter dealers will be targeted even in non-KYC off-ramps. And the legal burden will be on them to prove that what they're doing. So, I mean, I firmly believe that, any type of tax, crypto tax stuff, it's going to get worse and worse over time. It's you can already see it happening. And the gains that people are going to have in this bull run is just going to fuel this even more, right? Or people who are using KYC exchanges, if they're not paying their taxes, they're going to feel that, So you have to do some creative accounting to be able to prove these origins. So anyways, yeah, cool talk. And lastly, Luke Szarmowski from Cypherstack talking about the math behind divisors. And, sometimes I'll read, the anti-Monero person out there saying that there's only a couple people working on Monero. It's not a project to be taken seriously. The math there it's nothing. It's just like, listen, show them this presentation because you got some freaking smart people doing the math with Monero right now. I mean, this is some hardcore stuff. It was funny too because like he starts off at the beginning of this presentation being like, I'm going to keep things easy at first, and then we're going to get a little tougher. And I'm just like, yeah, I got this. Yeah, I got this. And so he starts talking, and he's telling the story, and then he's getting into the math, and he's talking about derivatives. And I'm like nodding my head, like, yeah, I got this. This isn't that bad. I'm starting to get a little cocky at this point. I'm like, okay, this math is really not that bad. Maybe those guys do have a point, right? And he's going on, and then the math is now getting pretty hard. And I'm like, all right, I'm starting to get filtered here. Okay, I'm starting to get filtered. And then he says, okay, that was the easy stuff. Now we're going to get to the hard stuff. And I was like, oh, shit. Like, I have no idea what's going on. And then it just got turned up, and I was like, I got filtered hard. Yeah, I mean, this is like very complicated stuff. Lots of formulas. If you're into math, you'll love this because they get into a lot of technical details. This right here is the difference between a project that is serious and amateur hour. Okay. If you don't have researchers like this doing hardcore auditing and like math stuff like this, it's not a serious project. Simple as. But anyways, that is that. Monerokon 2025 was freaking awesome. I mean, I didn't go, but the talks were all very, very worth watching. I hope this was interesting for you guys. I will be on Monerokon next year. I'm going to make the pilgrimage out to wherever it's going to be. I'm going to do it. Now then, Robot, you have now listened to like an hour and a half of my commentary on Monerokon 2025. Can you please give me just one positive compliment that shows that you care?
Beep boop. Of all the Monero criminals, you are my favorite. Beep boop.
Thanks, I guess. I'm not a criminal, though.
Beep boop. Only criminals have something to hide. Beep boop.
Yep. All right. Well, we only have about 10 minutes left of this program, so we're going to have a abbreviated news section today. Now, next week, we will be covering Tornado Cash in full, because if you weren't aware, the Tornado Cash trial starts today. So that is going to be ongoing. I'm going to be monitoring the court updates, and we'll have a full feature on next week's program. So I'm not going to really talk about any of the court stuff this week. We're going to push that all to next week once we have a lot more information, on what's going on and everything. Now, we have two major stories to get to, and then we'll talk a little Monero stuff, and then we'll sign off. So the first one, we got to talk about Ashigaru. So, a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that Whirlpool is back, which is obviously very exciting for everybody that, Samurai Wallet, although they, have been arrested and there's this ongoing court case with them, we then had this new project called Ashigaru, come out of nowhere and essentially continue what Samurai Wallet was doing. Now, we don't know anything about these guys. They could be malicious for all we know. So it's been a little, I've been careful to, endorse them necessarily, but I've been following them just because a lot of the Bitcoin influencers that I, am friendly with, they've been endorsing this project. So just by virtue of that, I've also been paying attention to this project. However, after, the Whirlpool implementation was announced, there were some criticisms that were, levied against them, mostly by this guy on Twitter, Floppy something. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. And so, I'm reading over his criticisms, and it does seem to be somewhat legitimate. And I kind of brought this up on Twitter as well. And this guy, BC1984, I have a link to a write-up that he did about this. But basically, he looked into the problems that were raised about Ashigaru, and there does seem to be some legitimate concerns about the way the implementation is handling the RSA keys that are being given out during the mixing process. You can read through the whole article for the technical stuff. I'm going to kind of keep this brief just because we don't really have much time here, and as it is, I'm not as like well versed in how Whirlpool works relative to how Monero works. But basically, once you start a Whirlpool process, you're assigned RSA public keys. But the problem is these keys kind of follow you as you're going through mixing your Bitcoin. And so essentially somebody can just follow you mixing repeatedly. And this is obviously a problem because if your keys are following you, that's kind of like a piece of metadata that's following you throughout the process. So obviously this is a problem, and this mixed up with the fact that this is a centralized coordinator. It's not like a decentralized Whirlpool. It does lead me to be cautious about this, and I can't really give my full endorsement to this project yet until we get some more information about this type of vulnerability. Now, I bring this up, though, because the Ashigaru team, they do have like an online blog. I don't know how responsive they are or anything, but I really think this is a great opportunity for them to, confront these accusations and to, put out their just like a fully fledged response to something like this, because this is pretty complex stuff, and it's kind of hard for me to follow along, but it does seem to be that this does seem to be like an attack vector, and it's kind of based on the fact that there could be a malicious coordinator, and we don't really know who's behind this project. With Samurai Wallet, like those guys were very active on Twitter. They were always responding to people who were calling them out. And in this case, it's kind of no one's really responding to anything because there's no one there to respond. So basically, if you are listening, Ashigaru, I would really like some sort of acknowledgement of this problem and maybe some next steps as to what you guys are going to do, because I do want to like make an Ashigaru terminal video, kind of like a walkthrough video, because Bitcoin privacy right now is just really not non-existent, and I would really like for this project to succeed. So that's really what I have to say on that matter. The good news, though, is that the aforementioned article does find that this doesn't really impact single round mixing, but if you are doing long-term frequent mixing, this could correlate your mixes with an identity. So just be aware of that, and I really encourage anybody who's using Ashigaru to read this review and to also put pressure on Ashigaru to respond to these accusations. All right, next up we got Dero, and if you hadn't heard yet, somebody has de-anonymized the entire blockchain, and they've put it online for everybody to see. This follows what happened a year ago when Luke Parker decided he had enough of the Dero trolls, and he revealed that you could de-anonymize Dero. And there's a whole lot of drama here. We're going to skip over it because it's really not important. But basically, it exposed Dero for being, pretty fraudulent. And their lead developer, known as Captain, he abandoned the project, and there's been no work done on it. Which is funny because, you have the Dero supporters, constantly chirping at Monero still just because they have nothing else better to do, I guess. So anyway, some individual, they released a block explorer where you can go and actually just basically see every single transaction. The amounts, you can see the messages people were sending each other, and you can search by user. And yes, that means if you know somebody with a Dero username, you can actually see all their transactions and all the messages they were sending people. So yeah, this is pretty much the death knell for this project. I'm not going to dance on their grave necessarily, just because vulnerabilities happen and de-anonymization attacks happen. But with Darrow, like the people who were left, supporting the project, there weren't that many, but they were a very vocal minority. They were very stubborn, and they didn't take any of these claims seriously. And this is what happens, when you have nobody left other than bag holders. It's amateur hour, and a lot of privacy projects are, out there are like that. They're pump and dumped by Jeff Berwick and crypto, or what's that other guy's name? Raphael, whatever. You know who I'm talking about. These guys suck ass. They're only there to make money. And really, if you follow these guys, you should be telling them to, apologize, because they've been shilling this crap even after this de-anonymization stuff that come out. And people are going to get screwed on this. But, for them, the privacy side of this doesn't matter. All that matters is they get to pump and dump on people. So, yeah. Anyways, Darrow, I think this is the last time I'm ever going to mention them on this show, just because, you can't recover from something like this. We got a few Monero news updates, and then I'm going to get going. First off, Unstoppable crypto wallet. They've yet again announced that they are closing in on finishing up a Monero wallet, so that should be coming out soon. I'm not the biggest fan of Unstoppable. You can find my past rant on that in a previous episode, but it's cool to get more Monero wallets, so I am happy to see that. And speaking of Unstoppable Swap, which is a atomic swap implementation in Monero, well, they're rebranding to Eigenwallet. Now, it's kind of funny. Like, I was very against this. Prior to like doing my show, I thought I was going to go on a rant about this for being dumb, but quite literally, as I was recording this just now, I was thinking about, I'm doing this, like, that news story about Unstoppable Wallet, and then I realized, like, oh, that's probably why they rebranded to this Eigenwallet, because Unstoppable Swap is so similar to Unstoppable Wallet. Like, that it's like that brand is already taken, essentially. So maybe that's why they rebranded. You also have to think that RitoSwap is really dominating the decentralized marketplace kind of ecosystem right now with Monero. So maybe by rebranding, they think they're gonna take some of that back. I'm not really sure. I don't really like the name, I'll be honest here, Eigenwallet, but I don't know. I wish them all the best, because we need more decentralized platforms, and I got nothing against them. I've actually never used their service, so as part of the videos I will be making on my channel, I got like a million different videos I want to make. I will be getting to it, guys, but I will eventually try out Eigenwallet, and just see how it works, because I've never used it. I've heard good things though. It's battle tested for about 3 years now, and it's a legitimate atomic swap implementation with Tor support. So that's freaking awesome. And apparently, they're going to be adopting cup rate as well, and they will also bring users access to Sarai, which I didn't even know about. So it looks like they are kind of innovating itself or re-innovating itself and adopting these new implementations like cup rate and the decentralized exchange Sarai, and making themselves even better. So I didn't even know about that until I was doing my research before the show. So I'm excited to check that out. So Eigenwallet, they got a new rebrand and everything. We'll be covering this later on in the year. And last but not least, Shop and Bit stats for June 2025. We lost again. Monero, third place, 13.69%. Now, Bitcoin, second place, 34.99%. So who's in first? It was Zcash. No, I'm kidding. No, Tether in first place with 49.66%. It was the USDT on Tron. I guess this was their first month accepting that, and they got first place. Am I surprised? A little bit. I mean, we'll see what happens next month with this. I've been monitoring these stat websites for a while now, and very consistently, it's been Bitcoin and Monero at the top of these. And this is one of the first times when something else has kind of slipped ahead. I think Ethereum once had a month that it was ahead on coin cards or something. But here we see Tether far in the lead. Maybe it was just a whale who happened to be cashing out. Not really sure, but that's quite a bit of money there. And maybe this will be a trend with these stablecoin assets being the cryptocurrency people want to spend. And during bull runs, maybe people don't want to spend Monero as much. Maybe people want to hold on to it more. So possibly a developing story here, but we have to wait for the next month. So thanks to ShopInBit for having those statistics for us to, take a look at that. And yeah, we'll see. I mean, the other thing too is with stablecoins and with this legislation that passed with the Genius Act, we may see a lot more censorship with that, and that could impact how people want to use that in the future. All right, so I'm going to wrap things up there. Thanks for listening, guys. As always, if you want to donate, you can go to xmrchat.com/Xenu. My website, antimoonboy.com, has all the links to everything, including my merch. So buy a t-shirt if you like this content. All the money goes to really right back into the show to pay for my website, things of that nature. So anyways, thanks for all the support, guys, and I'll see you guys next Monday.